Journal of Tellen Morwyth, Antiquarian of the 9th Archive. Entry 1, The Crater in the Weald. Date, 17th of Emberwane, year 341 after sundering. Location, Northern Killia, somewhere past the Rook Barrow Spine. Weather, dappled sun, thin mist still curling through the underwood. Quiet. I nearly missed it. The climb to the rim was so gradual, so utterly concealed by the press of the Weald, I had no sense of ascending at all. For half a day we hacked our way through dense green, the roots like twisted rope, the ferns thick enough to swallow Tellin to the waist. I cursed the underbrush, nearly turned us back. The maps were useless, just green and guesswork, and then we stepped through the veil of trees and the world ended. A vast crater, almost perfectly circular, sprawled before us, like a god had pressed a thumb into the earth. At its center, ruins. The blackened ribs of some sunken structure jut from the valley floor, half swallowed by overgrowth, but unmistakably man-made. Massive, ancient, dead. I stood there for a long while, just breathing. The air is different here, not thinner, not colder, but heavier and silent. Not even the birds will cross the rim. Lyra was speechless, her hand on my arm as if to confirm we were both seeing the same thing. She's been chasing this place with me for 3 seasons now. Said it was nothing more than Bard's ghost song when I first told her of the college that vanished into its own voice. I think she believes me now. Tellin, on the other hand, is pacing behind us with that same grim scowl he's worn since we left Darn Keep. Says the earth feels wrong here, that the trees grow backward. I don't know what that means, but I'll let him mutter. He's good with rope and better with steel, and if anything waits in that ruin besides moss and stone, I'll be glad to have his blade. The descent looks difficult but not impossible. Vines and exposed root systems should see us halfway down, and I spotted a game trail weaving along the inner rim. We'll make camp here tonight and begin the climb at first light. I can hardly sleep knowing what lies below. If this is truly Dirgehold, then the myths were real. And if the myths are real, then Zareth's forge might still be down there. T. Morwyth. Journal of Tellen Morwyth, Antiquarian of the 9th Archive. Entry 2, The Hollow Descent. Date, 18th of Emberwane. Location, floor of the Dirgehold crater. Weather, mist thickens after dusk. No wind. The trees are wrong. We didn't make the descent. We fell it. What began as a careful climb became a skidding plunge when the shelf beneath Tellin gave way. Wet moss, loose rock, poor luck, take your pick. I remember the sound of the earth shifting, Lyra's startled cry, and then the world went sideways. We must have tumbled 200 feet, maybe more, sliding through root-choked gullies and down shale-cut ruts that grabbed and flayed us all the way to the basin. We're alive. Somehow. No broken bones, at least. Tellin's ankle twisted badly, though, swelled up like a blight pod. I wrapped it best I could and braced it with one of the broken tent rods. He's not talking much, though that's hardly new. But the look he gave me when I offered to help him hobble to camp, well, I've seen less hatred in a bear's eyes. Lyra, gods. She took the worst of it. There's a gash across her brow, ran right through her left eye and down to the cheekbone. Deep but clean, bled like a gutted bird. She never once cried out. Just sat there in the ferns while I stitched it shut, her face slick with blood, whispering something I couldn't hear. She says her vision's still there. I don't know if I believe her, but she smiled after. That's almost worse. We lost half the damned equipment. Tellin's pack blew open during the fall. Our reference scrolls, ink kits, the resonance chimes, even the rations. Gone into the green. I'll spend the morning scouring the slope for what I can find. Without the survey tools, I won't be able to map the ruin properly. Even if we do find Zareth's forge, what proof can I carry back? And then there are the trees. They looked odd from above, but down here, they don't move with the wind. They don't move at all. Their bark is like papery skin, but hard, too hard. Brittle to the eye like dry scrolls, but the moment you touch it, it grates like stone. They grow inward, toward the ruin. I swear to the keeper, I counted 4 that were leaning overnight. Lyra won't go near them. We lit the fire high. I've stacked torches around the camp's edge, just to see something besides those twisted trunks. Still no birdsong. Still no breeze. Tellin said something tonight, while I was sealing Lyra's wound. Said he thinks the ground here isn't soil. That it's bone. I told him he's been listening to too many of my stories, but I'll admit this much. I've stopped calling it the crater. It feels more like a mouth. T. Morwyth. Journal of Tellen Morwyth, Antiquarian of the 9th Archive, Entry 3. The Gate of the Weeping Muse. 19th of Emberwane beneath the crater sky, Dirgehold ruins, Outer Bailey. We reached the ruins at dusk. The slope into the basin widened near its center, and the mist broke enough for us to see the shattered dome rising from the tree line, a crown of black stone bent inwards like the ribs of a broken drum. Everything else had collapsed into the earth long ago. Only this, the entry, remained standing. The gate is vast, ornate, unapologetically grand. Twin doorstones rise from the ruin's shell, scorched in places but intact. What passes for a threshold is choked by roots, vine, and the statue. They built her into the middle of the entryway, a woman carved from white-veined marble, barefoot and half-clad in a flowing gown. Her eyes are closed, her mouth slightly open. Her hands are caught mid-stroke across the strings of a harp that rises nearly to her shoulder. The folds of her robe spill down around her, wide enough to brush the edges of the gate itself. She stands where no statue should. Had they placed her even a pace to the left or right, 5 men could have walked through side by side. As it is, she has forced the ruins' only passage into a narrow divide, single file on either side, heads bowed without meaning to. There is no plaque, no verse, no name, only a sense of something held, a note not yet finished. I cannot say why they built her into the stone. She does not fit, and yet I cannot imagine this place without her. We made camp in what remains of the bailey, just beyond the gates. Most of the paving stones are long buried, and the inner halls have sunken behind broken archways and leaning pillars. A small section of wall still stands to the south, enough to give us cover from the wind, though the air down here does not move. The stars came out early, too early, clearer than they should be, sharper, as if the sky here is closer than it ought to be. Lyra noticed first, pointed to a constellation I didn't recognize, said it was humming. She's humming too now, not a song I know. A simple rise and fall of tone, barely more than breath. There are no lyrics, but something in it catches behind in my chest. It's not memory, it's not beauty, it's pulling. I asked where she'd heard it. She didn't answer. She just kept humming. Tellin hasn't said a word. He hasn't since the descent. He sits with his leg braced and his blade across his lap, eyes fixed on the dark beyond the campfire. Once or twice I've caught him glancing toward the statue, but he looks away when I do. He hasn't asked to leave. That concerns me more than if he had. There is something in the shadows. I can feel it. Not Dyra, not yet, but something watching, waiting. I've placed 4 torches around the perimeter just beyond the firelight to mark the boundaries of the camp. None have gone out, but I can no longer see the 4th. We'll begin the survey tomorrow. If the structure is as intact below ground as I suspect, there may still be records to recover. Vaults, diagrams, etched floor plans. A tuning hall, perhaps, maybe more. For now I sleep beside the fire, where the light still holds. The stars are too bright, the air too still, and the stone woman does not face the door. She faces inward. T. Morwyth. Journal of Tellen Morwyth, Antiquarian of the 9th Archive, Entry 4, False Stone and Forgotten Songs. 20th of Emberwane, beneath the Weeping Rim, Dirgehold ruins, upper floors. The exploration has begun in earnest. Tellin and Lyra have kept to the task. For all his brooding, Tellin moves with purpose. He's favoring the ankle, but he won't admit it. I've heard him muttering under his breath more than once, something about the floor beneath him swaying or shifting ever so slightly. I dismissed it at first, but I'm less certain now. The stone here does not feel settled. It groans softly in the morning chill, like an old house holding its breath. I've left them to finish the mapping of the bailey and what remains of the ground floor. There's little more than collapse and overgrowth there now. What towers once stood have long since fallen inward. The eastern wing is almost entirely sunken. Still, Lyra swears she found what may be a collapsed scriptorium beneath one of the archways. We'll dig at it if we have time. The entrance to the lower levels wasn't difficult to find. There's a passage set beneath the central dais, partially exposed, almost inconveniently visible, as if someone had cleared it before us. The vines were brittle, the stones worn bare. I could almost believe someone had walked the path ahead of us, but that's not possible. There's been no movement in the Weald for decades, no trade routes, no survey teams. The trees alone would have choked the path closed again, and yet the way was clean. That unsettles me more than if we'd found it buried. What continues to baffle me is the persistence of the lie that Dirgehold still functions, that the college yet sings. The ballad of the shrouded gate, the lament of the wandering Muse, all trace their verses back here. Even now, travelling bards whisper that one may still earn a place within its hallowed halls. There are no supply roads, there is no echo of song, only stone and silence, and us. I wonder how many hopeful apprentices followed those tales into the Weald, believing they might ascend to glory, only to vanish. Perhaps they are the roots that feed these trees. I shouldn't write that, but the thought lingers. Forest does not feel empty. It feels fed. I consulted my folios today, specifically the rubbings I took from the Antiquarian tablets of Nerun K, that old set of relic stone fragments we recovered from the temple vaults in southern Kilia. Their etched reliefs make mention of a low-born weeper who forged sound into blade and soul beneath the sundered cradle. That cradle, I believed, referred to the crater, an origin point for the Sunderer's forging, and by extension, Zareth Albryn's hidden forge. But there is nothing here to indicate that this ruin is the same structure Zareth once called home. This place is new, at least in relative terms. The stonework bears the lines and flourishes of late Ashari Baran craftsmanship, perhaps 200 years old, no more. The arches are too refined. The mosaics along the interior corridors are still legible. One depicts a bard ascending steps, carved from clef marks, beneath which writhing hands reach upward. Another shows a weeping stag crowned with laurels, bleeding from his ears. This is not the forge. It may stand atop it, or beside it, or worse, between it. The only ancient things here are the trees. They lean inward toward the ruin as if drawn. I counted the statue again today. Her harp has 7 strings, not 6. That bothers me more than it should. Tomorrow, I go below. Perhaps the stones beneath these pretensions still hold truth. I've waited too long, studied too much to be content with imitation. Let them map the rot above. I will go where the songs are buried. T. Morwyth. Journal of Tellen Morwyth, Antiquarian of the 9th Archive entry. 5. The Mouth Beneath the Hall. 21st of Emberwane, Breathless Depth, Dirgehold Ruins, Lower Levels. I descended alone this morning. The stone stairs behind the statue wound down 3 full tiers, each level built in rings around a central chamber, or what once was a chamber. The lowest floor opens to a yawning void that should not be there. The ground has collapsed, not in the manner of structural failure or time's slow grind, but as if the earth gave way deliberately. The entire center of the lower levels has been devoured by a sinkhole, or something worse, an unnatural pit that drops through the floor like a gouged eye. The way the stone has folded inward, cracked in spirals, does not resemble decay. It resembles impact, or intention. The chasm is vast. I dropped a stone, marked it with phosphor. It fell for 9, maybe 10 seconds, before vanishing into shadow. No sound of landing, just gone. And then the wind. A cold breath from below touched my face when I leaned out over the ledge. A breeze that smells of mineral and stillness, and something I can't quite place. It carries a sound. Not a whisper, not this time. A toning, low and constant. A drawn-out hum like the final thread of a string pulled too tight. I sat on the rim of the hole and listened, eyes closed, breath held. After a while, I opened my mouth slightly, the way singers do when they're trying to catch pitch before breath. The tones grew clearer. It sounded like language, not common tongue, not old Baranai, but structured, tonal. There were lilted forms, repeated clusters. I could almost place it. High Killian, perhaps? One of the older forms, but twisted, slowed, drenched in something, like hearing poetry recited underwater. I spent hours mapping the perimeter. All 3 floors share the same construction. Smooth walls, swept corridors, alcoves meant for dormitories or studies. But nothing remains. No tapestries, no writing, not a chair, not a book spine. The place has been scoured as if it were never meant to be lived in, only watched and waited in. I lingered longer than I meant to. When I turned back, the stairs felt steeper, heavier. I don't mean physically. I could feel a pull, subtle but constant, like hands resting on my shoulders, politely insistent. I had to speak aloud to shake it. I told the dark no and made the climb. I didn't tell Lyra that part. She's coming with me tomorrow. I told her no. She didn't care. There's steel in her when she chooses. I find I don't mind the thought of company, if only to keep my thoughts from spiraling inward like the hole itself. But her wound is worse. The skin around it is discolored. The scar tissue that's begun to form looks strange, pale, not like flesh. And the way her eye waters, it isn't tears. She doesn't seem to feel it. But she looks through me now, not at me. When I returned tonight, she was humming again, the same song, only now with a single word repeated at the end of each refrain. I tried to write it phonetically, but the sound wouldn't stay on the page. The ink smeared. My hand shook. Torren said nothing. He was already asleep, face turned to the stone. He hasn't left the camp all day. Lyra suggested we let him rest tomorrow. He didn't argue. There is no wildlife here, no insects, no decay, only dust, wind, and that sound from below. I'll descend again at dawn. If there's something beneath this ruin, I will find it. And if I don't return, let this entry serve as my map and my memory. Journal of Tellen Morwyth, Antiquarian of the 9th Archive. Entry 6A. The pit breathes no more. 22nd of Emberwane, morning descent. Dirgehold ruins. The pit. We descended like ghosts. No voices, no echoes. Just the sound of our boots on old stone and the hush of torchlight licking blackened walls. It felt less like entering a ruin and more like passing through the throat of some vast, waiting thing. There was no wind today. That was the first oddity, but even calling it that feels absurd. There is nothing about this place that isn't odd. The air here behaves like water, thick and heavy. Without the breath from below, it was like being sealed in a tomb. The stone is darker here. It reflects almost no light. Our torches burn but do not chase the shadows. It's as if the walls drink the flame. We rested at midday in a small recess along the stair, where a shaft of sunlight pierced all the way down from the surface above. For a moment it brought relief, but only for a moment. The light did not behave as it should. It spilled down, yes, but the closer it drew to the bottom of the pit, the more it seemed to wither. Less light reached the far walls than should have. It was like watching a drop of ink fall into still water, pure at first, but dissipating into grey. The pit. That is its name now. I can call it nothing else. It drinks light, it drinks sound, and now, I fear, it is beginning to drink us. I keep brushing at my neck. The feeling comes and goes, a crawling beneath the skin like small insects running the length of my spine. It worsens when the song begins. Yes, the song again. The same haunting melody Lyra hums when she forgets herself. Only now, down here, it's not just in her mouth. It's in the walls, in the stone. I heard it clearly as we descended to the 11th level, low, tonal, woven like chant. If I close my eyes and listen carefully, I can almost recognize the dialect. High Killian, but slower. Drawn-out vowels. Funeral cadence. When I asked Lyra if she knew the words, she said only, "They sing to me." She wouldn't say who they were. I should want to flee this place. I should be afraid, terrified, but I'm not. There's a gravity in me now, a certainty. I know in the marrow that Zareth's forge is close. Or perhaps I am merely closer to it. The veil is thin here. My grandmother spoke of this, of the hush and pull when walking too near its edge. I thought her stories were metaphor, they were not. Thank the one God I brought my journal. Entry 6B. The Song of the Sealed Hall. 22nd of Emberwane, late afternoon, Dirgehold ruins. The Great Hall, 12th level. We found it. The Great Hall, and I cannot describe its splendor, nor its horror. It lies on the 12th floor west of the pit, sealed off behind what must once have been a passage collapsed by rock slide. The way in was narrow. We had to squeeze between leaning slabs and drag our packs behind us. There's no hope of clearing the path. The stone is far too thick, but beyond it, the hall waits. And gods above and below, what madness took place here. They brought everything down, all the furniture, all the decor, all the remnants of life I'd been scouring the ruin for. They were here, piled against a vast doorway on the far wall. Tables, couches, broken instruments, ornate crates stacked high, braced against what I can only assume was a door leading back to the pit on this level. And around the barricade? Bodies. Hundreds. Skeletons in half-rotted robes, slumped against walls or curled beside fallen candelabras. Some still hold lyres, warped and stringless. Others grip carved goblets, hands frozen in the act of drinking. There are no signs of violence, no blast marks, no signs of disease, just silence and decay. It is as though they gathered here and celebrated, sang, and died, willingly or not, around a door they feared to open. The vaulting of the hall is beautiful. Cracked mosaics gleam with faded gold leaf, depicting musicians mid-performance, their faces hidden behind mirrored masks. I found Lyra reading a carved script on the southern wall, a block of text etched deep, preserved despite the ruin. She didn't answer when I asked what it said. She just stared at it and kept her hand pressed flat to the stone. The expression on her face was almost reverent. I'll bring my etching tools tomorrow. I couldn't read the runes under torchlight, but the structure of them, again, it feels like High Killian. A forgotten branch, perhaps, one I've never studied, one I'm not sure should be studied. We left quickly. I told myself it was the torch sputtering, but the truth is, I felt the room watching us back. Entry 6C. The Climb That Wasn't Ours. 22nd of Emberwane. Nightfall. Dirgehold ruins. Camp. The ascent was the worst yet. Every step felt like wading against a tide that wasn't water. I can't describe it properly. A pressure behind the sternum, a weight behind the eyes, like walking through someone else's grief. I could barely breathe. And I was not alone. Lyra lagged behind me for most of the climb, which is unlike her. She hasn't spoken since we left the hall. Not once. Her face is pale, almost chalked. The wound above her brow has deepened in color, angry, almost bruised. The skin around her eye is grey. She did not eat tonight. Tellin had prepared dry rations, laid them out neatly near the fire. I didn't ask when he'd woken. He didn't greet us, just nodded once and returned to whatever thoughts haunt him now. He watches Lyra too much. I don't think he likes what he sees. Neither do I. I should call it here. The candle burns low. But I keep hearing the song, not from Lyra now, from below, and I fear tomorrow I will follow it. Tellin Morwyth. Journal of Tellen Morwyth, Antiquarian of the 9th Archive, Entry 7, The Fall and the Flame. 6. 23rd of Emberwane. I cannot mark the hour. Dirgehold ruins, camp, though it no longer feels like one. Disaster, what else could I call it? What other word would do? Tellin is gone. We awoke to find his bedroll empty, his pack untouched. His cloak still hung on the post by the fire. The coals were cold. There was no note, no sign of struggle, only absence. At first I thought he had fled, slipped away in the night, perhaps consumed by the slow rot that's been clawing at all of us. But it didn't make sense. He'd shown no interest in the lower levels. He hated them. He spoke openly of the pressure, of the way the stones creaked when no one moved. But still I knew, not guessed, knew. I cannot explain how. It was a certainty I've only felt once before, and God's help me, I remember it too clearly. The morning Bryce fell. He was almost 3, just learning to climb things he ought not. I remember watching from across the room as he reached for something on the counter, the chair rocking beneath his feet. I was too far. I called out, but too late. The chair tipped backwards. He fell as though slowed by the hand of Isander himself. And yet I was slower. The sound of his skull on the floor, it cracked something in me that day. And now, God's help me, the memory returned this morning with such clarity it left me breathless. The dread was the same, that helpless knowing, that certainty of tragedy already unfolding. I took the torch closest to hand and descended the stairs 2 and 3 at a time. I do not know how I stayed upright. The spiral blurred around me, the stones sang, and then on the 11th floor I found him. He stood at the edge of the pit, his back to me. He didn't turn, didn't speak. He simply leaned forward, arms at his side, and let himself fall. There was no resistance in him, no panic, no cry. He dropped like a stone dropped into still water, and what I saw fall was not Tellin, it was Bryce. The scream that tore from me should have shaken the ruin down. It did not. Nothing answered. Not the stone, not the wind, not the gods. I do not know how long I remained there, on my knees, at the edge, waiting for something, someone to climb back up. The silence around me was complete. It held me like a mother holds a child. And then Lyra arrived. She said nothing, just passed behind me, then stepped up beside me at the ledge. I feared she might follow him, or perhaps I feared I would. She held an unlit torch in one hand, fresh, unburned. I hadn't heard her behind me. I don't know how she navigated the descent in the dark, but she had, and I was grateful. I took it from her with trembling hands and used my sputtering flame to light hers. Then I leaned out, holding my torch, my own dying flame, over the pit, and let it fall. It spun slowly as it went, casting a fluttering golden halo down the shaft. 8 floors, maybe more. Then it reached Tellin. It landed beside him. He had fallen headfirst onto a jut of wreckage protruding for the wall. If not for that ledge, who knows how long he would have fallen. His body was bent in on itself, spine twisted, legs folded like wet branches, arms behind him, neck gone. He had not survived the fall. That was mercy. The flame lasted only a moment longer, then it vanished. Not with a hiss, not with the sputter of spent oil. It went out all at once, as though something below had exhaled, snuffed it like a candle on a shrine. After that I remember nothing. Not the climb, not returning to the camp, not how I came to be in my bedroll with quill in hand. And yet here I am, here where ink still flows and my hands tremble, where grief comes with breath, where I see not the pit but the kitchen floor of my home in Renkeren. The wash of blood on stone, my son's eyes wide in stillness. Why now? Why must I carry that weight again? Why would this place show me that? I hear the music now, and it is no longer in the walls. It is inside me. T. Morwyth. Journal of Tellen Morwyth, Antiquarian of the 9th Archive, Entry 8. The Lightless Chord, 24th of Emberwane. The great hall and below, though I cannot say how far I found her in the hall. Lyra. I do not know when she left camp, whether she walked past me in the night or whether I simply forgot she was ever beside me. But I found her standing where we left the barricade, hands blackened with dust and old lacquer, pushing and prying at the mountain of broken chairs and splintered benches with a kind of cold resolve that frightened me more than any madness would have. She had cleared enough that we could slip through. The door opened with a long breath, like something sighing out the centuries, and the dark beyond welcomed us with arms far too wide. I do not know what I expected. A vault, a shrine, a place set apart. Not more corridors, not more twisting paths that turned back on themselves, doubling and narrowing like veins choking on old blood. There was no dust here, only cold and stone that absorbed the light. Zareth's forge is down here. I know it. I feel it in the marrow of my grief. But something else is here too, and I can no longer tell if it's the pit I left behind, or the one that has opened inside my chest. There's a hollow behind my breast now, a quiet that should not be. The music never stops. And Bryce cries in its rests. I wept today, without shame, without resistance. The song drew the memory from me, of that day, of his body limp in my arms, the little breath he had left, the way it slipped past his bloodied lips, and the music turned that name into a refrain. I don't remember dropping the torch. I only remember the dark and then the glow. It came from a small side chamber, half collapsed, barely large enough to crouch in. I do not know why I turned, only that something pulled me, gently, as if by the shirt collar, and I obeyed. There, against the far wall, rested the skeleton of a bard, its bones brittle and grey, its ribs like curled parchment beneath a shroud of darkened cloth. What had once been robes were now little more than threads wrapped around hollow form. But what lay atop the corpse? Gods preserve me. It was an instrument. At first, I thought it a lute, but its proportions were wrong, larger, heavier, and yet more refined. Its neck was longer, its body carved into a shape that suggested both elegance and endurance. The sound chamber was rounded but broader at the base, tapering near the neck like a droplet held mid-fall. There were 6 strings, not 12, each stretched impossibly taut across a bridge that had long since fused to the wood. But the strings, they glowed. A faint white blue, like starlight drawn through smoke, and they hummed. Not loudly, not in pitch, but with tension, a readiness, like a blade yet to be drawn. I stared at it for too long, and the despair took hold. I could feel it, something in that chamber feeding on me. Not my body, my sorrow. It tugged on my grief like a spoiled child tugging a toy from my arms. I felt unmade. Not all at once, but in quiet pieces. Each breath took something from me and did not return it. I would have remained there. I think I wanted to. But then I turned and saw Lyra watching me. She stood in the narrow entry, face lit by the glow of the strings. Her left eye, the wounded one, shone with the same spectral light. And in its center, gods, I know that shape. A Sikarad, the mark of the Blood Lords, the Doom's eye. She did not blink. She did not speak. The flesh around her wound had begun to pulse, and beneath the skin I saw glyphs rising like bruises, high Killian runes, crawling in patterns I could not read. Her hand reached forward, slow, not threatening, but beckoning. I ran. I ran like the boy I once was, afraid of thunder, clutching a broken candle in a storm. I ran through corridors I could not name, brushing stone I could not see, chased not by footsteps, but by the weight of everything I had ever failed to protect. I stumbled into the great hall again, slipped through the narrow gap, collapsed against the barricade, the door at my back. I sit here now, pen in hand, pages blood-specked and trembling. She followed. At first I heard only the soft scrape of her nails on the wood, like someone idly testing a harp string. Then the thuds began. Not frantic, not angry, just rhythmic, final, inevitable. I do not know if she is still Lyra, but I know what I saw in her eye, and I know that the Dirra are here. But so is something else. It is feeding on me. Not with teeth, not with claws, but with want, with a hunger that drinks memory like wine, that savors grief like song. I should stop writing. She's thudding again. T. Morwyth.